From strong tornadoes being possible across portions of the Midwest tomorrow to Tropical Storm Mekkhala, likely to become a significant typhoon by the middle of next week. This is your Chonkita weather forecast for June 20th, 2026. First of all, looking at our current day 2 SPC severe weather outlook, this is going to be for tomorrow's severe weather threat. You can see we have a slight risk of severe weather from western Nebraska, all the way into central and southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, all the way back to southwestern Ohio. For our tornado risk tomorrow, we have a 5% tornado risk across central Missouri back to the southern half of Illinois, all the way into the southern half of Indiana, and also a sliver of northwestern Kentucky. That includes areas like St. Louis, Indianapolis, Louisville, and Evansville, all the way towards Jefferson City. So if you're in those areas, make sure you're prepared for the tornado threat tomorrow. We also have a 2% tornado risk from north central Oklahoma and south central Kansas, all the way back to southwestern Ohio. And we have a SIG 1 area across southeastern Kansas, back into southern and central Illinois, all the way back into southern and central Indiana, where you can see a couple of strong tornadoes tomorrow. And we also have a 2% tornado risk from west central Nebraska, all the way back into northwestern Kansas, where we could see an isolated tornado or two in those areas tomorrow, the 2% tornado risks. And we are talking about a potential upgrade to a 10% tornado risk once we get more certainty in a few things, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes once we get into the discussion. But for our wind risk today, or tomorrow, we have a 15% wind risk from southwestern Nebraska, all the way back into southern and central Missouri and northern Arkansas, back to southwestern Ohio, where some sky-damaging wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour will be possible. And we do have a 5% damaging wind risk from much of Nebraska, back into portions of the Ohio Valley there, including southwestern Ohio and central Kentucky, where in that area we could see some isolated damaging wind gusts reaching 60 to 65 miles an hour, so not a super significant threat, but we will likely see at least some sky damaging winds with a 15% damaging wind risk tomorrow. And there are no sick areas added yet, so no hurricane force winds are expected as of now. But we do have a 15% hail risk from western Nebraska all the way into southern Illinois for tomorrow. We have a couple areas to watch for some potentially very large hail. We have a SIG 1 area across western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, into western Kansas. And we have another SIG 1 area from north central Oklahoma all the way back into west central Illinois and central Missouri, where we could see some hail from the size of ping pong balls to baseballs tomorrow, so make sure you prepare for that threat. And our 5% hail risk extends from much of Nebraska back into the eastern Texas Panhandle, all the way back into north central Kentucky and southern and central Indiana, where some isolated large hail up to the size of ping pong balls will be possible tomorrow. Now, going down to their discussion, you can see they're saying severe storms are possible along a frontal zone from the Ohio Valley to the Central Plains from Sunday afternoon into night. Large hail to very large hail, severe winds, and tornadoes, some of which could be strong, which that is very strong wording for just a 5% SIG 1 tornado threat, and it could get upgraded. We'll talk about in a minute, but they're saying all of that will be possible. If we go down here, we'll talk about 40 to 50 plus knot winds at the 500 millibar jet, which that basically translates to about 45 to 60 miles an hour, which that's decent, but obviously not like how we've seen on June 11th or June 17th. The mid-level jet was much higher, probably closer to 60 to 70 knots, maybe even 80 knots. They're seeing the latest model runs remain consistent in depicting a 12Z Sunday. There will be at least one MCS going on, and there will be a decent low-level jet axis from eastern Kansas to portions of northern and central Missouri, and we're expecting a general decrease of storm coverage for the morning. There will be the presence of modestly strong wind shear, which could still spawn some isolated occurrences of damaging winds and perhaps some hail from Missouri into western Illinois, and we're seeing there likely will be new storms in the afternoon from Illinois and Indiana in the vicinity of the remnant MCV, which is a middle-scale vortex west-southwest along the trailing outflow and warm frontal boundary, and we're talking about the low-level jet vapor and enhanced warm thermal and moisture fluxes, which will allow for the storms to have lower bases and will be able to produce some large hail, damaging winds, and even tornadoes. We're seeing in Missouri and Illinois and Indiana in the Sunday afternoon into evening, vast very high probability of supercells and Boeing structures will exist. However, as it was alluded to in the Day 2 discussion earlier, and is still the case, there is considerable uncertainty in the composite boundary location where it will set up to the north or the south. So basically, if they get more confidence of that, they will likely upgrade to a 10% tornado risk sometime tomorrow. And we are going to look at our river models in a minute, but first of all, I did want to talk about the Day 2 excessive rainfall outlook from the River Prediction Center. This is going to be for your flash flooding risks for tomorrow. You can see we have a moderate risk of flash flooding from southeastern Kansas into western and northern central Missouri, all the way back to southern Illinois and southern Indiana, where we will likely see some widespread flash flooding tomorrow. And we could even see some scattered significant flash flooding in the overall totals. We'll talk about that in a minute after we get into the discussion, but you can see there's a slight risk of excessive rainfall from eastern Oklahoma and eastern Kansas back into portions of western Ohio and northeastern Kentucky, and we have another slight risk of flash flooding from central South Dakota back to northeastern Nebraska. In those areas we could see some scattered flash flooding tomorrow. Maybe in some isolated spots we could see some significant flash flooding. But going down to the discussion here, we are mainly talking about it's going to be the same as it was in their previous outlook. And if we go to their previous outlook, you can see we're talking about a area with up to 4 to 7 inches of rain across portions of northern Missouri and central Missouri there. And there will likely be at least widespread 2-inch to 3-inch totals, with some areas receiving up to 4 to 7 inches, as I said earlier, across eastern Kansas. We're also talking about up to 3 to 4 inches of rain, even up to 6 inches of rain, which is half a foot. So there could be some overall hourly totals of 3 inches an hour, or 3 inches per 6 hours, which would be pretty significant, but not the worst. I don't know why I said 3 inches an hour, that would be bad. But there will likely be some significant flash rain tomorrow across portions of the Great Plains into portions of the Midwest, so make sure you have multiple ways to receive flash flood warnings if you were in the slight risk or moderate risk of flash flooding tomorrow. Now looking at a couple of river models, starting with the 12Z or the 18ZH triple O meant, you can see we are starting at 12Z on Sunday here, which is about 7 a.m. Central Time. You can see there will be a couple areas of thunderstorms to watch, one across southeastern Nebraska and north central Kansas, another one across eastern Kansas as well, another one moving into western Missouri, and there will be some scattered thunderstorms ahead of it in southern and central Iowa, also in northern Missouri there. As we get towards 15Z, you can see there's a pretty significant MCS developing across eastern Kansas, so we still have some scattered severe thunderstorms across portions of northern and central Missouri there at 15Z, which is about 10 a.m. Central Time. And then as we get towards 18Z Central Time, you can see we have a pretty significant MCS across parts of central Missouri. You can see it's starting to take up some Boeing structure, and you can see there could be a couple supercells embedded in it, which could produce some large hail, some damaging winds, and potentially even some strong tornadoes. And you can see a couple supercells developing ahead of it. You can see one across western Illinois, and another one just to the northwest of St. Louis, and there's another supercell just to the south of our main MCS there. Those could bring a more significant tornado threat as well. And as we get towards 20Z, you can see the storms will start to move out of the area, but around 18Z, which is about 1 p.m. Central Time, 2:20Z, about 3 p.m. Central Time. St. Louis will be impacted with potential tornado threat, some flash flooding along with a damaging wind threat up to 70 miles an hour, and some large hail up to the size of ping pong balls. And you can still see a couple of supercells to the south of it, and there could still be some embedded supercells in that line of thunderstorms there. And as we get towards 0Z, you can still see we do get a few supercells to develop across central Missouri. One moves directly across the St. Louis area, so that could bring a significant tornado threat to the St. Louis area. And this was on the 12Z run too, so this has been showing up for a long time. You can also see a couple of other supercells near Jefferson City and to the southeast of Kansas City as well. And eventually those will move to the eastern region around 3Z there, which you can see we still have some scattered severe thunderstorms, nothing tornadic across central and southern Illinois, back to central and southern Missouri, all the way into eastern Kansas. This is going to be about 10 p.m. Central Time. And if we go to 12Z Central Time on Monday, you can see those thunderstorms have cleared out mostly, and there's just some remnants of a system across northern Arkansas and western and central Tennessee, where we can see some damaging wind gusts, maybe a few isolated tornadoes, along with some isolated very large hail. Now looking at the 18Z NAM-NEST, we're going to start at 12Z on Sunday. Here you can see 12Z Sunday has a large area of thunderstorms from eastern Kansas into western Iowa there. As we get towards 15Z here, you can see that line of thunderstorms will already be in central Missouri there, northern Missouri into central Missouri, all the way into much of Iowa there, bringing really no severe weather. Looks like maybe an isolated damaging wind threat. As we get towards 18Z there, which is around midday at 1 p.m. Central Time, you can see those thunderstorms clear out, which would be a worst case scenario for a tornado threat, and it could lead to a much more significant tornado threat if we get all that clearing. We're not too certain of that now, but if it didn't happen, we would likely see a 10% Sig 2 tornado threat, especially considering how good the environment could be with that kind of setup. As we get towards 21Z and 22Z, you can still see very only scattered thunderstorms across western Missouri there, potentially bringing a tornado threat to portions of that area. But as we get towards 0Z, you can see a small area of thunderstorms begins to build mainly in central Missouri there, mainly with a damaging wind threat, maybe some large hail and a low tornado threat. And as we get towards 2Z, which that will be about 9 p.m. Central Time, you can see the moves across southeastern Missouri, potentially bringing a tornado threat and a damaging wind threat. And as we get towards 12Z on Monday, you can see all the thunderstorms have cleared out, and there's only some scattered severe thunderstorms across northeastern Ohio back to portions of northwestern Pennsylvania. Now look at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's current forecast for Tropical Storm Mekkhala. You can see right now they have it at 55 knots, which is 65 miles an hour, and is located several hundred miles to the east of the Philippines there. It will gradually move west over the next couple of days, and it will gradually strengthen, eventually reaching low in Category 3 equivalent typhoon status there at 100 knots. At 6Z on June 22nd, which will be on Monday, and that is equivalent to 150 miles an hour, and eventually will peak around 110 knots on the 22nd and 23rd of this month, around 18Z to 6Z, and it could still become a low in Category 4 hurricane, but the forecast has lowered a little bit. That will peak around 125 to 140 miles an hour, and you can see it eventually moves north off towards those islands owned by Japan there, with the city of Kadena also including those islands, which I don't know how to pronounce still, but hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. They're just to the east of Taiwan there. They could see some 65 to 70 mile an hour sustained tropical storm force winds there, with some even higher typhoon force gusts there, and that will likely be in the middle of next week around June 25th. That could even be towards the end of next week, so it will likely peak around the middle of next week, around the Wednesday to Thursday time frame, even as early as Tuesday, and it will likely bring some significant impacts to those islands to the south of Japan there. They are owned by Japan, but they will likely start seeing impacts on Thursday or Friday, so make sure you are prepared for that. And if you're noticing why the top of the forecast cone is cut off is because the forecast cone is so large, they literally cannot fit it in the frame here. Now look at the current satellite imagery for Tropical Storm Mekkhala. This is from Colorado State University's satellite imagery website. You can see it is looking pretty good. You can see there's some convection wrapping around the center. You can see there's been some new thunderstorms popping up over the last hour or so, and you can see there's some nice inflow coming into the storm from the east there, and there's some nice outflow going in out of it from the west there, and you can also see some inflow from the southwest as well. It's looking like a pretty good system, and it will likely become a typhoon later tonight or early tomorrow morning. Playing our satellite loop here, you can see that it has been organizing quite well. You can start to see it spinning there. You can maybe even see a few lightning strikes occasionally there, which is a sign that it's strengthening. You can see some thunderstorms popping up in the outer bands of the north side. There's really no outer bands of the south side, but I think that's usually how it is. Like, whichever way the system's moving, that's where most of the outer bands are going to be. Like, if it's moving east, the outer bands will be in the east side. If it's moving west, the outer bands will start to form on the west side there. And you can see there's some pretty good info from the northeast, and there's some pretty good outflow to the southwest there, and it's looking like a pretty healthy system overall. And again, it will likely become a significant typhoon in the middle to late portions of next week. Let's look at our Google AI weather model here. This can be decently accurate on some cyclones, but you can see right now is a tropical storm located several hundred miles to the east of the Philippines there. But you can see if I fast it for just 24 hours, it already has it being a Category 3 typhoon there, and that would be a decent scenario there. You can see that's 1 day out at, I believe that's 6 a.m. or 60, whatever that is. But you can see it will get closer to the Philippines there. It will move west towards Luzon there before shifting relatively north there, and eventually could impact Japan there. But looking at our loop here, you can see it peaks as a high-end Category 3 equivalent typhoon there. You can even see a tropical storm behind it that will move west as well along a similar track. Eventually, it moves close to the east of Taiwan there, and eventually it gets into a tropical storm as it approaches with silence to the south of Japan, and eventually it will make landfall in Japan there, and it will speed up, and by the time it will likely be extratropical or post-tropical, but will still bring some widespread tropical storm force wind gusts and sustained winds there, and eventually it will move out of Japan there and move to the east. If it'll go, you can see eventually it moves to the east there, and eventually some of the models have it still going, but most of the models have it dissipating by then. If we go back and we click on the wind speeds here, you can see most of the models have it becoming at least a Category 2 equivalent typhoon, and a lot of them have it becoming a Category 3 equivalent typhoon, and not as many have it becoming a Category 4 equivalent typhoon, but still that's around half of them, I think, so there's still a chance, but very few of them compared to yesterday have it becoming a Category 5 equivalent typhoon, so that's unlikely as of now. But if anything major changes, I will make more weather updates over the coming days, especially on Tropical Storm and future Typhoon Mekkhala. Anyways, that is the end of today's weather forecast. If you're in the impacted areas for tornadoes, large hail, damaging winds, or flash flooding tomorrow across portions of the Great Plains and the Midwest, make sure you have multiple ways to receive tornado warnings, severe firestorm warnings, and flash flood warnings, especially for observed tornado warnings, destructive severe firestorm warnings, which will be unlikely tomorrow, but we could also see some PDS and flash flood warnings and some flash flood emergencies tomorrow across like Missouri into Illinois, Kansas, and Indiana. And also if you're in parts of Japan like central Japan, southern Japan, and those islands to the south of Japan owned by Japan, make sure you're prepared for future Typhoon Mekkhala, because you guys could see some significant flash flooding along with some tropical storm for sustained winds and typhoon force and tropical storm force wind gusts. And I will see you on the next weather forecast tomorrow. Goodbye.